The morning sun cast long shadows across the Rocky Mountain wilderness as 16-year-old Maya Rodriguez adjusted her backpack straps and whistled softly to her German shepherd. The dog's ears perked up immediately, his intelligent brown eyes scanning the forest trail ahead. Maya had been hiking these mountains since she was 8 years old, but today felt different somehow. Rex seemed more alert than usual, his nose twitching constantly as if picking up scents that troubled him. Maya's father worked as a park ranger, and she had learned to read the mountains like a book. Every broken branch, every disturbed patch of earth, every unusual bird call told a story. Today the forest seemed to whisper warnings that made her skin crawl. Rex had been restless all morning, whining softly and pulling toward the eastern ridge instead of following their usual path to Mirror Lake. "What is it, boy?" Maya asked, crouching down to scratch behind Rex's ears. The dog had been her constant companion for 3 years, ever since her father brought him home as a puppy. Rex wasn't just a pet. He was family, and Maya trusted his instincts more than most people trusted their own. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Maya noticed something that made her stop in her tracks. Fresh tire marks cut deep into the soft earth near an old logging road that hadn't been used in years. The marks were recent, maybe from the night before, and they led toward the most remote part of the wilderness area. Maya frowned, pulling out her phone to check for signal. Nothing. They were too far from civilization for cell towers to reach. Rex suddenly froze, his body going rigid as his nose lifted to catch a scent on the wind. Maya had seen this behavior before when they encountered injured wildlife or dangerous situations. The dog's training kicked in, and he began moving with purpose toward a dense cluster of pine trees about 50 yards off the main trail. Maya followed carefully, her hiking boots crunching softly on pine needles and fallen leaves. As they pushed through the undergrowth, she could hear Rex's breathing become more labored, not from exertion but from excitement or stress. Whatever he smelled was getting stronger. Then she saw it. A flash of dark blue fabric caught between two large boulders, partially hidden by fallen branches. Maya's heart began to race as she realized it wasn't just fabric. It was part of a jacket, and there was someone wearing it. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing slightly in the mountain air. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" No response came, but Rex was already moving toward the rocks, his tail low and his movements careful. Maya followed, pushing aside branches and stepping over loose rocks until she could see clearly what lay behind the natural shelter. 2 men lay unconscious among the rocks, both wearing dark suits that seemed completely inappropriate for wilderness hiking. One appeared to be in his 30s with short brown hair, while the other looked slightly older with graying temples. Both were pale and breathing shallowly, and Maya could see they had been there for some time. What struck her immediately was how out of place they looked. Their clothes were expensive and clean except for dirt and debris from lying on the ground. Their shoes were leather dress shoes, not hiking boots. These weren't casual hikers who had gotten lost or injured on a nature walk. Maya knelt beside the younger man and gently shook his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" His skin felt cold and clammy, and she could see a small trickle of dried blood near his hairline. The older man showed similar signs of injury and exposure. Rex circled the area, his nose working overtime as he investigated the scene. Maya watched her dog carefully, knowing his behavior would tell her if there was immediate danger nearby. Rex seemed focused on the men rather than scanning for threats, which told Maya they were likely alone. As she examined the men more closely, Maya noticed something that made her stomach clench with worry. Both men had small plastic ID holders clipped to their belts, partially hidden by their suit jackets. She carefully moved the fabric aside and felt her breath catch in her throat. FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. These weren't lost hikers or tourists. These were federal agents, and they were in serious trouble. Maya's mind raced as she tried to piece together what might have happened. How had 2 FBI agents ended up unconscious in the middle of nowhere, dressed in business suits instead of proper outdoor gear? Had they been chasing someone? Had they been brought here against their will? She checked both men for obvious injuries beyond the head wounds she could see. The younger agent had what looked like rope burns around his wrists, and the older one had a torn jacket sleeve. Neither appeared to have broken bones, but they were clearly suffering from exposure and possibly head injuries. Maya pulled out her phone again, hoping against hope for even 1 bar of signal. Still nothing. The nearest ranger station was at least 6 miles away, and the nearest hospital was over 20 miles down the mountain. Even if she could somehow wake the agents, there was no way they could make that journey in their current condition. Rex whined softly and nudged Maya's hand with his nose. The dog seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, and his usually playful demeanor had been replaced by serious focus. Maya made a decision that would change everything. "Okay, boy," she whispered, stroking Rex's head. "We need to help them. But first we need to figure out if whoever did this is still around." Maya stood up and scanned the surrounding area more carefully. The tire tracks she had seen earlier made more sense now. Someone had driven these agents up the old logging road and then carried or forced them to this remote location. The question was whether they had been left here to die from exposure, or if their attackers planned to return. The sun was already past its peak, and Maya knew that mountain temperatures could drop dangerously low once darkness fell. These men wouldn't survive another night without help, and she was their only hope of rescue. Rex moved to her side, pressing against her leg in a gesture of loyalty and readiness. Maya looked down at her faithful companion and felt a surge of determination. She didn't know who these agents were or what had happened to them, but she knew one thing for certain. She and Rex were not going to let them die on this mountain. Maya knelt beside the agents again, this time checking their pockets carefully for any clues about their identity or what had brought them to this remote location. The younger agent's wallet contained a driver's license identifying him as Special Agent David Chen, 28 years old, from Denver. The older agent was Special Agent Robert Martinez, 35, also from Denver. Both men carried FBI credentials and service weapons that were still holstered, which told Maya that whatever had happened to them had caught them off guard. Their attackers hadn't even bothered to take their guns, which seemed strange. Either the attackers were extremely confident they wouldn't be caught, or they wanted the agents found eventually. Rex continued his careful investigation of the area, moving in widening circles around the unconscious men. Suddenly, the dog stopped and began pawing at something near a fallen log. Maya hurried over to see what he had found. Hidden beneath a pile of dead leaves was a small digital recorder, the kind used for taking notes or recording interviews. Maya picked it up and saw that it was still powered on, though the battery indicator showed it was nearly dead. She pressed the play button and heard Agent Chen's voice. Scratchy and distorted, but understandable. "This is Agent Chen, badge number 4728. It's October 15th, approximately 9 p.m. Agent Martinez and I are pursuing suspects connected to the missing persons case in Millfield. We've tracked them to the old mining road near Copper Peak. The subjects appear to be using the abandoned mine shafts as a base of operations." The recording continued with the sound of footsteps and rustling vegetation. Then Agent Martinez's voice came through clearly. "David, something's not right here. This feels like a setup. We should call for backup." "No signal up here, Rob. We'll have to get closer to the main road before we can reach anyone." Maya's blood ran cold as she listened to what happened next. The sound of voices calling out, then shouting, followed by what sounded like a struggle. She could hear both agents calling out warnings before the recording dissolved into static and then silence. The timestamp on the recorder showed the recording had been made 18 hours ago. Maya realized these men had been lying here unconscious for almost a full day and night. They were severely dehydrated and probably suffering from hypothermia, even though the October weather wasn't extremely cold yet. She needed to get them warm and stable before attempting any kind of rescue operation. Maya shrugged off her backpack and pulled out the emergency supplies her father had taught her to always carry. A thermal blanket, water purification tablets, energy bars, and a basic first aid kit. She covered both agents with the thermal blanket and used her water bottle to wet their lips, hoping to get some moisture into their systems. Agent Chen stirred slightly when the cool water touched his mouth, and Maya felt a surge of hope. "Agent Chen, can you hear me? My name is Maya. You're safe now." The young agent's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. He tried to sit up, but immediately fell back with a groan of pain. "Easy," Maya said softly. "You've been hurt. You're in the mountains near Copper Peak. Do you remember what happened?" Agent Chen's hand moved instinctively toward his service weapon, then relaxed when he realized Maya was just a teenager with a dog. "How long?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The recording on your device shows about 18 hours. You and Agent Martinez have been unconscious. I found you both here among these rocks." Agent Chen's eyes widened with alarm. Martinez? Is he? He's alive but still unconscious. You both need medical attention, but I can't get a phone signal up here. I need to know if the people who did this to you might come back. Agent Chen tried to focus on Maya's face, clearly struggling with what was probably a concussion. Mining operation, he managed to say. Not mining. Something else. They were holding people. Maya felt her stomach tighten. Holding people? Like kidnapping? Missing persons case. Families reported loved ones disappearing near hiking trails. We tracked the pattern here. Agent Chen winced as he tried to move his head. They knew we were coming. Had to be a trap. Rex suddenly lifted his head from where he had been lying near Agent Martinez. His ears perked and alert. Maya recognized the dog's warning posture immediately. Something was approaching through the forest. Someone's coming. Maya whispered urgently to Agent Chen. Can you move? The agent shook his head slightly, then immediately regretted the movement as pain flashed across his features. Gun, he whispered. Take my gun. Maya had been around firearms her entire life thanks to her father's ranger training, but she had never imagined she might need to use one to protect unconscious FBI agents from criminals. She carefully removed Agent Chen's service weapon from its holster, checking to make sure the safety was on. Rex moved to position himself between Maya and the direction of the approaching sounds, his body low and ready. Maya could hear voices now, at least 2 people moving through the underbrush about 100 yards away. Check the drop site, a man's voice called out. If they're not dead yet, finish it. We can't afford to have them talking to anyone. Maya's heart pounded as she realized these were the people who had left the agents to die. They were coming back to make sure their plan had worked. She looked down at Agent Chen, who was trying desperately to stay conscious. How many? He whispered. Maya listened carefully to the voices and footsteps. Sounds like 2, maybe 3 people. Radio, Agent Chen breathed. In my jacket pocket. Emergency frequency. Maya found the small handheld radio and turned it on, keeping the volume low. She switched to what she hoped was the emergency frequency Agent Chen had mentioned. This is Maya Rodriguez, she whispered into the device. I'm with 2 injured FBI agents near Copper Peak. We need immediate assistance. Armed suspects are approaching our location. Static came back through the radio, then a voice. This is Park Ranger Station 7. Maya, is that you? This is Ranger Thompson. What's your exact location? Maya had met Ranger Thompson several times with her father. About 2 miles east of Mirror Lake near the old mining road. 2 FBI agents are seriously injured and the people who hurt them are coming back. Stay hidden. We're dispatching rescue teams and law enforcement immediately. Can you give me a landmark? Large boulder formation with 3 dead pine trees on the south side. And Ranger Thompson? They said something about holding people in the old mine shafts. This might be bigger than just attacking these agents. The voices were getting closer now and Rex's growl was becoming more pronounced. Maya knew they had only minutes before they would be discovered. She looked at the service weapon in her hands and hoped she wouldn't have to use it. Agent Chen grabbed her wrist weakly. Protection, he whispered. If something happens to us, you're the only witness. You have to survive to tell what you heard on that recording. Maya nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility that had suddenly fallen on her shoulders. She and Rex weren't just trying to save 2 injured agents anymore. They were the only thing standing between dangerous criminals and the continuation of whatever terrible operation was happening in these mountains. Maya pressed herself against the cold stone of the boulder, holding Agent Chen's weapon with trembling hands while Rex remained perfectly still beside her. The voices were now close enough that she could make out individual words, and what she heard made her blood freeze. Boss ain't gonna be happy if we mess this up, said a gravelly voice. He specifically said make it look like an accident. 2 FBI agents dying from exposure in the wilderness. Shut up, Tony, replied a second voice, younger and more nervous. Just check if they're still breathing. If they are, we finish it quick and get out of here. A third voice joined the conversation and Maya could tell this person was in charge. Both of you calm down. We stick to the plan. If they're dead, we leave them. If they're not, we make sure they won't be talking to anyone. Then we get back to the mine before the next shipment arrives. Maya's mind raced as she processed what she was hearing. These weren't just random criminals who had attacked the agents. They were part of an organized operation, and there was someone higher up giving orders. The mention of shipments suggested they were moving something valuable or illegal through the old mine system. Through a gap in the rocks, Maya could see 3 men approaching the area where she had first found the agents. They were dressed in camouflage hunting gear and carried rifles. The leader was a tall man with a gray beard, while the other two looked like they were in their 20s or 30s. Rex's muscles were coiled like springs, and Maya could feel the tension radiating from her faithful companion. The dog understood they were in danger, but his training told him to wait for Maya's command before acting. "Where are they?" the nervous voice asked. "I thought you said they were right here by these rocks." Maya's heart nearly stopped. The thermal blanket and the agents were gone. Somehow, in the few minutes she had been focused on the approaching criminals, both Agent Chen and Agent Martinez had vanished. Had they regained consciousness and moved to safety, or had someone else found them first? "They were here," the leader said, his voice tight with anger. "Look, there's the blood on the rocks. Someone moved them." "Maybe they woke up and crawled away to die somewhere else," Tony suggested. "No way. Chen had a head injury that should have kept him down for days, and Martinez was completely out when we left them. Someone else has been here." Maya realized with growing horror that the criminals knew exactly what injuries they had inflicted on the agents. This hadn't been a random attack or a case of wrong place, wrong time. These men had specifically targeted the FBI agents and had planned their injuries carefully. The leader knelt down and examined the ground where Maya had been kneeling earlier. Fresh footprints. Small ones, probably a woman or a kid. And look at this, dog prints. Maya's hands tightened on the weapon as she realized they had found her trail. Rex pressed closer to her side, and she could feel his readiness to protect her at any cost. "Fan out and find them," the leader ordered. "Whoever took those agents can't have gone far, especially if they're helping two injured men. And remember, no witnesses. We can't afford to have anyone talking about what they might have seen or heard." Maya knew she had only seconds before they would discover her hiding place. She made a decision that terrified her but seemed like the only option. Standing up from behind the boulder, she pointed Agent Chen's weapon at the three men. "Stop right there," she called out, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. "I'm armed and backup is on the way." The three criminals spun around in surprise, their rifles coming up instinctively, before they saw that their challenger was a teenage girl with a dog. The leader laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Well, what do we have here? Little girl playing hero with a grown-up's gun?" "I know how to use this," Maya said, trying to keep the weapon steady. "And I know about your operation in the mine shafts. The FBI knows too, and more agents are coming." The leader's expression changed from amusement to something much more dangerous. "Is that so? And I suppose you're going to stop us all by yourself?" Rex stepped forward slightly, a low growl rumbling in his throat. The sound made all three men take notice, and Maya saw uncertainty flicker across their faces. A well-trained German shepherd was not something to take lightly, even for armed men. "Where are the agents?" the leader demanded. "What did you do with them?" Maya realized this was her chance to buy time and maybe confuse them enough to give the real rescue teams time to arrive. "They're safe. I got them to medical help. They told me everything about your operation before they left." "You're lying," Tony said, but he sounded nervous. "There's no way you could have gotten them down the mountain that fast." "You'd be surprised what people can do when they're trying to save lives," Maya replied. "Unlike what you do, which is apparently kidnapping innocent people and leaving FBI agents to die." The leader raised his rifle, and Maya's heart nearly stopped. "I've heard enough. Jake, circle around to the left. Tony, go right. This little hero is about to learn what happens to people who interfere with our business." Before the men could move, a new sound echoed through the forest. Helicopter rotors, getting closer by the second. Maya felt a surge of hope as she realized Ranger Thompson had managed to get help airborne much faster than she had expected. "That's not a news helicopter," the leader said, his face grim. "That's law enforcement." "How did they find us so fast?" Maya smiled despite her terror. "I told you. The agents got word out before you tried to kill them. This whole area is about to be crawling with federal agents and park rangers." The sound of the helicopter was getting louder, and Maya could see the uncertainty spreading among the three criminals. They had expected to finish their business quietly and disappear back into the wilderness, but now they were facing the possibility of being caught in the open with nowhere to run. Rex suddenly barked once, sharp and loud, and Maya saw what had triggered his warning. Through the trees she could see movement as people in ranger uniforms began surrounding the area. The cavalry had arrived, and these criminals were about to find themselves vastly outnumbered. But Maya also knew that cornered and desperate people could be the most dangerous of all. She kept the weapon trained on the leader while Rex maintained his protective stance beside her. They just needed to hold on for a few more minutes until the rescue teams could reach them. "This isn't over," the leader snarled, backing toward the tree line. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into, little girl. We have people everywhere and they don't like witnesses." Maya's hands were shaking now, but her voice remained steady. "Then you better hope they're better at their jobs than you are, because I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been doing in these mountains." The helicopter circled overhead as park rangers emerged from the forest, their weapons drawn and voices commanding the three criminals to drop their rifles. Maya felt her knees go weak with relief as she realized the immediate danger was passing, but she kept Agent Chen's weapon ready until the rangers had the situation under control. "Maya Rodriguez," called out a familiar voice. Ranger Thompson stepped into the clearing, his face showing both relief and concern. "Are you hurt? Where are the injured agents?" "I'm okay," Maya called back, finally lowering the weapon as the three criminals were forced to their knees and handcuffed. "But I don't know where the agents are." "They were unconscious right here, but when these men came back, the agents were gone." Rex trotted over to Ranger Thompson, his tail wagging now that he recognized a friend. The dog's demeanor had completely changed from protective alertness to relief, confirming for Maya that the immediate threat had passed. "We found them," said another voice, and Maya turned to see a woman in an FBI windbreaker approaching through the trees. "Agent Sarah Walsh, FBI. We got your radio call and coordinated with the Park Service for emergency response. Agents Chen and Martinez are being airlifted to Denver General Hospital as we speak." Maya blinked in confusion, but they were unconscious. "How did they—" "Agent Chen regained consciousness shortly after you left to confront these suspects," Agent Walsh explained. "He managed to wake Agent Martinez, and they used their emergency training to get to a safer location, while you were distracting their attackers. Agent Chen radioed for additional medical support using his backup communicator." "He had another radio?" Maya asked, feeling suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline began to wear off. Agent Walsh nodded. "Emergency beacon, actually. All agents carry them. Chen activated it the moment he was conscious enough to function. He also reported that a civilian had found them and was providing assistance." "That was you, I assume?" Maya nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "They were talking about an operation in the old mine shafts. Something about shipments and holding people, and they mentioned missing persons cases." The FBI agent's expression became very serious. "We need you to tell us everything you heard and saw. This investigation is much larger than we initially realized, and your information could be crucial." As Maya recounted the events of the past few hours, she watched the three criminals being led away to waiting vehicles. The leader caught her eye as he passed and mouthed something that looked like a threat, but Maya refused to look away. She had faced him down once and she wasn't going to be intimidated now. The recording device, Maya suddenly remembered, pulling the small recorder from her pocket. "I found this near where the agents were hidden. It has their voices from last night, talking about the mining operation and missing persons." Agent Walsh took the device carefully, her eyes lighting up with interest. "This could be invaluable evidence. Maya, I need you to understand how important your actions today have been, not just for saving Agents Chen and Martinez, but for this entire investigation." "What kind of investigation?" Maya asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer was much worse than she had imagined. "Human trafficking," Agent Walsh said quietly. "We've been tracking a network that's been using remote wilderness areas to move people illegally. The missing persons reports that Chen and Martinez were investigating all fit the pattern of trafficking operations." Maya felt sick to her stomach. She had known the situation was serious, but the reality of what these criminals were doing to innocent people was overwhelming. "The mine shafts," she said. "They mentioned shipments arriving at the mine. Are there people being held there right now?" "That's what we're about to find out," Agent Walsh replied. "We have teams moving on the old mining complex as we speak. Your description of the conversation you overheard gave us enough probable cause to move immediately." Rex nudged Maya's hand with his nose, seeming to sense her emotional distress. She scratched behind his ears, drawing comfort from her loyal companion's presence. "Will I have to testify or anything?" Maya asked. "That man, the leader, he seemed to be threatening me." Agent Walsh's expression hardened. "Marcus Webb has been on our wanted list for over 2 years. He's extremely dangerous, but he's also going to prison for a very long time. You won't need to worry about him threatening anyone ever again." "Marcus Webb?" Maya repeated. "You know who he is?" "Oh yes. He's been running trafficking operations across 3 states. We've been trying to catch him for months, but he's always stayed one step ahead of us. Until today, when a 16-year-old girl and her dog managed to do what trained federal agents couldn't. Maya felt a mix of pride and disbelief. I was just trying to help. Anyone would have done the same thing. Actually, most people would have panicked or tried to get help without putting themselves in danger. You made a choice to stay and protect 2 injured agents, even when you knew dangerous criminals were coming back. That takes real courage. The sound of helicopter rotors was fading as the medical evacuation completed, but Maya could see additional aircraft circling the area. The investigation was expanding rapidly, and she realized she was witnessing the takedown of a major criminal operation. Agent Walsh called one of the rangers. We're getting reports from the mining site. You need to hear this. Agent Walsh walked over to confer with the ranger, leaving Maya alone with Rex for a moment. She looked around at the forest clearing that had been the site of so much drama and danger just an hour earlier. Now it looked peaceful again, with sunlight filtering through the pine trees and birds beginning to resume their normal activities. Rex looked up at her with his intelligent brown eyes, and Maya could swear she saw understanding there. He had known something was wrong from the very beginning of their hike, and his instincts had led them to exactly where they needed to be. Good boy, she whispered, kneeling down to give him a proper hug. We did it, Rex, we really did it. Agent Walsh returned, her face grim but satisfied. Maya, I need to ask you one more favor. Would you be willing to come with us to give a formal statement? We've found evidence at the mining site that confirms everything you overheard, but we need your testimony to make sure we can prosecute everyone involved. Maya looked around at the forest that had been her peaceful refuge for so many years and was now the center of a federal investigation. She thought about the missing people who might finally be found and returned to their families because of what had happened today. Of course, she said, but Rex comes with me. We're a team. Agent Walsh smiled for the first time since Maya had met her. I wouldn't dream of separating you two. From what I understand, Rex here is as much a hero as you are. As they walked toward the waiting vehicles, Maya realized that her quiet morning hike had turned into something she would remember for the rest of her life. She had helped save 2 federal agents and potentially numerous trafficking victims, all because she and Rex had trusted their instincts and refused to walk away when people needed help. 3 weeks later, Maya sat in the witness box of the federal courthouse in Denver, her hand resting on Rex's head as he lay quietly beside her chair. The courtroom was packed with reporters, FBI agents, family members of trafficking victims, and federal prosecutors who had been working around the clock to build their case against Marcus Webb and his organization. Maya had spent hours with FBI investigators, going over every detail of that morning in the mountains. The recording device she had found contained crucial evidence that linked Webb's organization to kidnappings across 3 states. More importantly, the information Maya had overheard about the mine shafts had led to the rescue of 8 people who had been held captive for weeks. Agent Walsh sat in the front row, having recovered fully from his injuries. Beside him was Agent Martinez, who had suffered a more severe concussion but was back on duty. Both men had personally thanked Maya for saving their lives, but they had also made it clear that her quick thinking had saved many more people than just the 2 of them. Miss Rodriguez, said the federal prosecutor, a stern woman named Ms. Carter, please tell the court what you observed on the morning of October 16th when you discovered the 2 injured FBI agents. Maya had practiced this testimony many times, but speaking in front of a packed courtroom still made her nervous. Rex seemed to sense her anxiety and pressed closer to her leg, providing the comfort and confidence she needed. I was hiking with my dog Rex in the mountains near Copper Peak, Maya began, her voice steady despite her nerves. Rex started acting strange, like he could smell something that worried him. He led me off the main trail to a group of rocks where I found Agent Chen and Agent Martinez unconscious. As Maya continued her testimony, she watched the jury carefully. They seemed genuinely engaged with her story, and several jurors looked angry when she described finding the recording device and hearing the agents' voices from the night they were attacked. Did you hear the defendants discussing their criminal activities? Ms. Carter asked. Yes, Maya replied firmly. I heard Marcus Webb tell the other 2 men to check if the agents were dead, and if they weren't, to finish killing them. He also mentioned shipments arriving at the mine and said they couldn't afford to have witnesses. The defense attorney, a sharp-dressed man who had been objecting frequently throughout the trial, stood up. Objection, Your Honor. The witness is a minor who was under extreme stress. Her recollection cannot be considered reliable. Overruled, the judge said firmly. The witness has been consistent in her testimony across multiple interviews, and her account is corroborated by physical evidence. Continue, Miss Rodriguez. Maya looked directly at Marcus Webb, who was sitting at the defense table trying to look innocent and harmless. It was hard to believe this was the same man who had threatened to kill her and had been responsible for so much suffering. When Mr. Webb realized that someone had found the agents and moved them to safety, he ordered his men to find me and make sure there were no witnesses. He specifically said that no one could be allowed to talk about what they had seen or heard. The prosecutor showed Maya several photographs of the crime scene and the evidence that had been collected. Maya identified the location where she had found the agents, the recording device, and the path the criminals had taken through the forest. Ms. Rodriguez, after this experience, do you have any doubts about what you saw and heard that day? No, Maya said without hesitation. Rex and I saw everything clearly. These men tried to murder 2 FBI agents and leave them to die in the wilderness. They're also responsible for kidnapping innocent people and holding them prisoner. I won't ever forget what I witnessed. During cross-examination, the defense attorney tried to shake Maya's testimony by questioning her age, her experience, and whether she might have misunderstood what she heard. But Maya had been well prepared by the prosecution team, and she answered every question calmly and confidently. Miss Rodriguez, isn't it possible that in your fear and excitement, you might have imagined some of the conversation you claim to have overheard? No, sir, Maya replied. I have excellent hearing, and I was hiding very close to where they were talking. Plus, I had the recording device with the agents' voices describing the same criminal operation. Everything matched up perfectly. But surely a 16-year-old girl couldn't be expected to understand the complexities of a federal investigation. Maya felt a flash of anger at the condescending tone, but she kept her voice level. I may be 16, but I'm not stupid. When someone says they're going to finish killing 2 injured FBI agents, it's not complicated to understand that they're planning murder. Several jury members nodded at this response, and Maya could see that the defense attorney's strategy wasn't working. Rex remained perfectly still throughout the questioning, his presence providing Maya with the confidence she needed to stand up to the aggressive cross-examination. After Maya finished testifying, she was allowed to stay in the courtroom to watch the rest of the trial. Over the next 2 days, she heard testimony from the rescued trafficking victims, FBI agents who had investigated the case, and forensic experts who had analyzed the evidence from the mine shafts. The picture that emerged was of a sophisticated criminal organization that had been operating for years. Webb's group had been targeting vulnerable people, particularly immigrants and runaways, and using the remote mountain locations to avoid detection. The old mine shafts had been converted into holding facilities where victims were kept before being transported to other locations. Agent Chen testified about the investigation that had led him and Agent Martinez to the mountains. He described how they had been tracking missing persons reports and had finally identified a pattern that pointed to the Copper Peak area. We knew we were walking into a dangerous situation, Agent Chen said. But we had no idea it was a trap. Webb's organization had someone feeding them information about our investigation. This revelation sent a murmur through the courtroom. Maya hadn't realized that there was corruption within law enforcement that had enabled Webb's operation to continue for so long. Agent Martinez described the attack itself, explaining how they had been ambushed while investigating the mine entrance. They knew exactly where we would be and when we would be there. If Miss Rodriguez and her dog hadn't found us, we would have died from exposure, and this entire organization would have continued operating. On the final day of testimony, Webb himself took the stand in his own defense. Maya watched in fascination as the man who had threatened her life tried to convince the jury that he was innocent of all charges. Webb claimed that he had been camping in the mountains and had simply found the injured agents, not attacked them. He insisted that the conversation Maya had overheard had been misunderstood and that he had actually been trying to help. I'm a family man, Webb said, looking directly at the jury. I have children of my own. I would never hurt innocent people or federal agents. This whole case is based on the overactive imagination of a scared teenage girl who didn't understand what she was seeing. Maya felt her anger rising as Webb lied so smoothly to the jury, but she also felt confident that the evidence against him was overwhelming. The recording device, the physical evidence from the mine shafts, The testimony of the rescued victims, and the corroboration from multiple FBI agents all painted a clear picture of his guilt. As the trial moved toward closing arguments, Maya realized that she had played a crucial role in bringing a dangerous criminal to justice. But more importantly, she had helped rescue innocent people and prevented countless future crimes. She looked down at Rex, who had been by her side through everything, and felt proud of what they had accomplished together. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with their verdict. Maya sat in the front row of the courthouse, her father beside her and Rex lying calmly at her feet. The past month had been a whirlwind of media attention, FBI interviews, and preparation for the trial, but now it was almost over. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" asked Judge Harrison, her voice carrying clearly through the silent courtroom. "We have, Your Honor," replied the jury foreman, a middle-aged man who had paid close attention throughout Maya's testimony. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder against federal agents, how do you find? Guilty. On the charges of human trafficking, how do you find? Guilty on all counts." Maya felt tears of relief streaming down her face as the judge continued reading through the long list of charges. Webb was found guilty on every single count, from kidnapping to conspiracy to attempted murder. His 2 accomplices, who had taken plea deals in exchange for testimony against Webb, had already been sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Webb himself showed no emotion as the verdicts were read, but Maya could see his defense attorney's shoulders slump in defeat. The evidence had been too overwhelming, and Maya's eyewitness testimony had been too compelling for any jury to ignore. Judge Harrison set sentencing for the following month, but she made it clear that Webb would be facing life in prison without the possibility of parole. The human trafficking charges alone carried mandatory minimum sentences that would ensure he never walked free again. As the courtroom began to empty, Agent Walsh approached Maya and her father. "Maya, I want you to know that the FBI is recommending you for the Director's Community Leadership Award. It's the highest honor we can give to a civilian who has assisted in a federal investigation." Maya's father beamed with pride, but Maya herself felt somewhat overwhelmed. "I was just trying to help," she said quietly. "I never expected any of this attention." "That's exactly why you deserve recognition," Agent Walsh replied. "You didn't help because you wanted praise or rewards. You helped because it was the right thing to do, even when it put you in serious danger." Rex looked up at Agent Walsh and wagged his tail, seeming to understand that this woman was praising his beloved human. The agent smiled and knelt down to scratch behind the dog's ears. "Don't think we've forgotten about you either, Rex," she said. "The FBI is also recommending Rex for an honorary service award. He's earned it just as much as Maya has." Over the next few weeks, Maya found herself dealing with unexpected fame. News outlets across the country picked up the story of the teenage girl and her dog, who had saved 2 FBI agents and helped bring down a human trafficking ring. Interview requests poured in from television shows, magazines, and newspapers. Maya's father helped her navigate the media attention, making sure she only spoke to reputable journalists and that her story was told accurately. They decided together that Maya would use the attention to raise awareness about human trafficking and the importance of trusting your instincts when something seems wrong. "I want people to understand that trafficking doesn't just happen in big cities," Maya explained during a television interview. "It can happen anywhere, even in places that seem safe and remote. And sometimes ordinary people like me and Rex are the only ones who can help." The rescued victims from Webb's operation had varying degrees of recovery ahead of them. Some had been held for only a few weeks and were able to return to their families relatively quickly. Others had been missing for months and needed extensive counseling and medical care. Maya was particularly moved by the story of Elena Vasquez, a 19-year-old college student who had been kidnapped while hiking alone 6 months earlier. Elena's family had never given up searching for her, and her reunion with her parents was featured prominently in news coverage of the case. "I never thought I would see my family again," Elena said during a press conference. "Maya and Rex saved my life, along with the lives of 7 other people. I will never be able to thank them enough." The FBI investigation also uncovered the corruption that had enabled Webb's operation to continue for so long. A mid-level agent in the Denver office had been feeding information to the trafficking ring in exchange for money. This agent was arrested and charged with conspiracy. Adding another layer to the already complex case, Agent Chen, who had recovered fully from his injuries, was promoted and transferred to the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force. He stayed in touch with Maya and her father, occasionally visiting to update them on how the broader investigation was progressing. "Your testimony didn't just put Webb away," Agent Chen explained during one of his visits. "It helped us understand how his entire network operated. We've been able to make arrests in 5 other states based on information we gathered from his operation." Maya learned that the old mine shafts where the victims had been held had been converted into an elaborate underground facility. Webb's organization had spent years preparing multiple locations throughout the mountain regions, creating a network that could move people without detection. They chose those locations specifically because they were remote and because local law enforcement didn't have the resources to patrol them regularly, Agent Martinez explained. They thought they were untouchable up there. The trial had also revealed the scope of Webb's organization. What Maya had stumbled into was just one small part of a trafficking network that extended across the western United States. Webb had been a regional coordinator, not the ultimate leader, but his arrest had given federal agents the evidence they needed to pursue the larger organization. Maya found herself thinking often about the chain of events that had led to that morning in the mountains. If she had chosen a different hiking trail, if Rex hadn't picked up the scent that led them to the agents, if she had decided to go for help instead of staying to protect them, everything would have turned out differently. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't been there," Maya confided to her father one evening as they sat on their porch with Rex lying between them. "But you were there," her father replied, "and that's what matters. You and Rex were exactly where you needed to be, when you needed to be there. That's not coincidence, Maya. That's character." The media attention began to die down as other news stories took precedence, but Maya continued to receive letters and emails from people across the country who had been inspired by her story. Many were from young people who said they wanted to pursue careers in law enforcement or victim advocacy because of what she had done. Maya was particularly touched by a letter from a group of middle school students in Arizona who had started a volunteer program to help search for missing persons in their area. They called themselves Maya's Rangers and included a photo of their group with their own search dogs. "These kids understand something that a lot of adults miss," Maya told her father as she read the letter. "Everyone can make a difference if they're willing to pay attention to what's happening around them and take action when they see something wrong." Maya prepared to return to her normal life as a high school student. She realized that she had been changed forever by the experience. She had seen the worst of human nature in Webb and his organization, but she had also seen the best in the FBI agents, park rangers, and ordinary citizens who had worked together to bring justice to the victims. 6 months after the trial, Maya stood on the steps of the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., wearing her best dress and holding Rex's leash as photographers captured the moment. Director Patricia Morrison was about to present Maya with the Director's Community Leadership Award, the highest honor the FBI could bestow upon a civilian. The ceremony was attended by dozens of FBI agents, including Chen and Martinez, who had flown in specifically to see Maya receive her recognition. Elena Vasquez and 3 other rescued trafficking victims were also present, along with their families. Maya's parents stood proudly in the front row, her father wearing his park ranger dress uniform for the occasion. "Maya Rodriguez represents the very best of American citizenship," Director Morrison said as she addressed the gathered crowd. "When faced with a choice between personal safety and helping others, she chose courage. When confronted by dangerous criminals, she chose to stand her ground. When given the opportunity to walk away from a difficult situation, she chose to get involved." Rex sat perfectly still beside Maya, wearing a special collar that identified him as an honorary FBI service dog. The media had loved the story of the teenage girl and her faithful companion, and Rex had become something of a celebrity in his own right. The actions of Maya and Rex on that October morning saved the lives of 2 federal agents and led to the rescue of 8 trafficking victims, the director continued. But their impact extends far beyond that single day. The intelligence gathered from this operation has resulted in the arrest of 47 individuals across 6 states, and the rescue of over 100 additional victims. Maya felt overwhelmed as she listened to the director's words. She had known that her testimony had been important, but she hadn't realized the full scope of what had resulted from that morning in the mountains. When her name was called, Maya walked forward to receive the award, with Rex maintaining perfect position beside her. The crystal plaque was heavy in her hands, and the words engraved on it seemed almost surreal, in recognition of extraordinary courage and service to the cause of justice. "Thank you," Maya said when invited to speak to the gathering. "But I want everyone to remember that I didn't do this alone. Rex was with me every step of the way, and without him, I never would have found Agent Chen and Agent Martinez. I also want to thank all the law enforcement officers who put their lives on the risk every day to protect people like me." After the ceremony, Maya had the opportunity to meet with some of the other trafficking victims who had been rescued as a result of the broader investigation that followed Webb's arrest. Their stories were both heartbreaking and inspiring, and Maya was amazed by their resilience and strength. "You gave us our lives back," said David Park, a 22-year-old who had been held by Webb's organization for 8 months. "I know, it probably doesn't feel like you did anything special, but to us, you're a hero." Maya still struggled with being called a hero. In her mind, she had simply done what any decent person would do when faced with the same situation. But she was beginning to understand that not everyone would have made the same choices she had made. Agent Walsh, who had been promoted to head the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force, pulled Maya aside during the reception following the ceremony. "I wanted to give you an update on something that might interest you," Agent Walsh said. "We've been working with Congress on new legislation that would increase funding for anti-trafficking operations in remote areas. It's being called the Maya Rodriguez Act." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "They're naming a law after me?" "The legislation focuses on improving coordination between federal agencies and local law enforcement in wilderness areas, exactly the kind of coordination that made your rescue possible. Your story has been instrumental in getting congressional support for the funding." Maya felt a mix of pride and responsibility as she realized that her experience was continuing to have impacts she had never imagined. The idea that her name would be associated with efforts to help future trafficking victims was both humbling and motivating. Rex had attracted his own fan club at the reception, with FBI agents and their families eager to meet the famous dog who had helped solve such an important case. Rex handled the attention with typical German Shepherd dignity, accepting praise and treats while staying close to Maya's side. During the flight home to Colorado, Maya reflected on how much her life had changed since that October morning. She had received scholarship offers from several universities with strong criminal justice programs. A publisher had approached her about writing a book about her experience. Most importantly, she had found her calling in life. "I want to study criminal justice," Maya told her parents as their plane descended toward Denver. "I want to work with trafficking victims and help catch the people who hurt them." Her father smiled. "I think that's a perfect choice. You've already got more experience in that field than most people twice your age." "And Rex?" her mother asked. "What's next for him?" Maya looked down at her faithful companion, who was sleeping peacefully in the airline carrier beside her seat. "Rex and I are a team. Whatever I do, we'll do it together." Back home in Colorado, Maya returned to her normal routine of school and hiking in the mountains. But now her weekend trips into the wilderness had a different purpose. She had begun volunteering with search and rescue operations, using her knowledge of the mountain terrain and Rex's tracking abilities to help find missing hikers and lost children. Maya also started speaking at schools and community organizations about human trafficking awareness. She wanted people to understand that trafficking happened everywhere, not just in foreign countries or big cities. Her message was simple: pay attention to your surroundings, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to get involved when something seems wrong. Most people think that trafficking is someone else's problem, Maya would tell her audiences. But the truth is, it could be happening right in your own community. The victims I helped rescue were being held less than 10 miles from where I live. If I had decided that finding those injured agents wasn't my responsibility, those people might still be prisoners today. Rex had become an integral part of Maya's presentations, demonstrating how dogs could be trained to detect signs of danger and assist in rescue operations. Many schools and youth organizations began developing their own programs pairing young volunteers with search and rescue dogs. A year after the ceremony in Washington, Maya received a letter that touched her deeply. It was from Elena Vasquez, the college student who had been rescued from Webb's operation. "Dear Maya," the letter read, "I graduated from college last month with a degree in social work. I'm starting a job next week with an organization that helps trafficking survivors rebuild their lives. I wanted you to know that you didn't just save my life that day in the mountains. You inspired me to dedicate my life to helping other survivors. Thank you for showing me that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose courage over comfort." Maya showed the letter to Rex, who wagged his tail as if he understood the importance of Elena's words. Maya had learned that heroism wasn't about being fearless or having special powers. It was about making the right choice when faced with a difficult situation, even when that choice involved personal risk. As Maya looked toward her future, she knew that her path would continue to be shaped by that October morning when she and Rex had stumbled upon two injured FBI agents. The experience had taught her that anyone could make a difference in the fight against injustice, regardless of their age or background. "Ready for another adventure, boy?" Maya asked Rex as they prepared for their weekend hike. Rex barked once in response, his tail wagging with enthusiasm. Together, they headed into the mountains that had changed their lives forever, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. Maya Rodriguez and Rex had proven that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge from the most unexpected places, and their story would continue to inspire others for years to come.